Cap, you read me? Cap, it's Sam. Can you hear me? On your left. Avengers!
Assemble. We have a plan. 6 stones, 3 teams, 1 shot. You mess with time. Time tends to mess back. Tony, this is a second chance.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Charlie. Marvel released a trailer for the Avengers Endgame Encore re-release of Endgame. They're adding 4 additional minutes to the movie that will connect it to Avengers Doomsday in a more direct way than it was in the original theatrical cut, so we will break it all down in what's happening with the movie, all the deleted scenes that are in the film. Everybody swap your regular glasses for your special X-Men glasses because we have 4 additional minutes coming that will lead up to Avengers Doomsday. I can already hear all the Thanos memes coming back. You could not live with your failure. Where did that bring you? Back to me. If you feel like 4 additional minutes is not a big enough reason to go see Avengers Endgame and you're not like really hyped up to go see, do not worry. I will do all the breakdown videos of all the new footage and how it does connect with Avengers Doomsday because most of you have already seen some of that footage. And it's all because, for the most part, this additional 4 minutes is a Captain America Steve Rogers post-credit scene end of the movie that's meant to set up the very beginning of Avengers Doomsday and what's happening with Dr. Doom, Steve Rogers, and the stolen lives that he talks about in the Avengers Doomsday trailer.
All of you have lived stolen lives, but now you must give them back.
Pretty much everybody on the planet has seen the theatrical cut of Avengers Endgame at least a couple times by now since 2019 when it originally came out in theaters. Supposedly the additional footage includes a custom new intro, new longer versions of scenes from the theatrical cut that were in the edit they just cut down for time because it was already a very long movie, and a special end tag scene that starts with Steve Rogers when he goes back to return the Infinity Stones. During the end of the original version of the movie, he goes back, but he stays to live with Peggy Carter, then coming back as an old man after he's lived an entire life with her and had their sons together, 2 sons from Captain America Winter Soldier that they called out when Peggy Carter died as an old woman. Falcon then asks him, "Are you going to tell me about that girl that's the wedding band on your ring?" And he says, "No, I don't think that I will," because he doesn't want to tell her about the life that he lived with Peggy Carter, but also now what they're doing because of Avengers Doomsday and Avengers Secret Wars. That old man Captain America lived through Avengers Doomsday and Secret Wars. People were wondering, how does his timeline work? Where is old man Cap when Avengers Doomsday picks up? So the idea is that this additional footage at the end of Avengers Endgame that will connect it with Doomsday is seeing young Steve Rogers go back to live with Peggy Carter, their son being born that we saw in the Avengers Doomsday teaser earlier this year, where he's just really happy, like he comes back on his motorcycle, they're living at their house, and enough time has gone by that their son has been born. The house that he goes into is meant to be the exact same house that we saw during Avengers Endgame. As part of the new footage, and this is also backed up by the Loki scenes in the Avengers Doomsday trailer, you see Loki in his TVA uniform with his TVA card with the World Tree on the back of it, so it's a little unclear on exactly when in Loki's timeline he does this, but he's still doing his regular rounds and working with the TVA at this point, and he goes to tell Captain America that you can't stay here in the 616 universe with Peggy Carter having this child because you're causing a Nexus event. It's eventually going to cause an incursion, so the whole idea is that the TVA is about to come prove ruin Captain America Steve Rogers' life here with his son, and it's all going to get erased. Loki comes back to visit him in his house because if you look in the background, the curtains are the same curtains inside Steve Rogers and Peggy Carter's house from Avengers Endgame. Loki tells them that he wants to do him a solid and take them to another world in another reality where they can just live out their lives and be happy together, like Captain America's retirement, basically, as he grows to be an old man eventually. So he takes them to another Earth, and that other Earth winds up being the 828 universe of the Fantastic Four's universe. And supposedly there's a scene with Steve Rogers' son growing up a little bit more, watching cartoons, and the cartoon that he watches is the cartoon from the Fantastic Four post-credit scene, with the Fantastic Four from the 1960s show, basically.
It's Red Ghost and his Super 8!
It's clobbering time!
There are a lot of people that wondered why that post-credit scene was in the Fantastic Four movie. Originally, there was supposed to be a Steve Rogers post-credit scene for the Fantastic Four movie that would set that up, but it sounds like they just wanted to wait to do that till they started promoting Avengers Doomsday in a bigger way. Like, no, just save all the Steve Rogers 828 universe stuff for later. And at some point, Dr. Doom in the background starts learning about the incursions on his own, and he's so pissed off that he's lost his family. As Sue Storm says, they grew up together, they went to college together, they were good friends, but then at some point he lost everything. He lost his family, became a broken man, and set on his quest to completely change reality to bring back his family and make his one perfect Earth and take back all the stolen lives, quote unquote, that he talks about to all the other characters from all the different universes in the Avengers Doomsday trailer. And one of the big ideas is that he blames Captain America, Steve Rogers, for the stolen life and his loss of his family as well. Because Steve Rogers shouldn't have this family, he's not supposed to stay in the past, according to Dr. Doom, like it's aberration and it's causing incursions. So I believe the idea is that they're using this to directly set up the plot of Avengers Doomsday and Avengers Endgame, because the way the Russos talked about it, they wanted Avengers Doomsday and Avengers Secret Wars to be written to be more direct sequels to the events of Avengers Endgame, and the consequences of what they do in Endgame will influence what's happening in Doomsday and Secret Wars, and that gets into all the time heists they did with the Infinity Stones and Steve Rogers going back to live in the past with Peggy Carter, which technically he was not supposed to do. And here's where we get back to old man Captain America Steve Rogers from the end of Avengers Endgame. What happens to that guy? So here's the idea. The Steve Rogers that we see in the Avengers Doomsday trailers is just a little bit older than the Captain America Steve Rogers we saw at the end of Avengers Endgame. Like, enough time has gone by that his son grew up a little bit in the Fantastic Four's 828 universe with them. Long enough for him to grow out his hair a little bit more and grow a beard. The plot of Avengers Doomsday plays out. He eventually helps them try to stop Dr. Doom. They wind up failing because Doom becomes God Emperor Doom. He collects all this power and is able to collapse the rest of realities, the three final versions of Earth, the Fantastic Four's universe, the X-Men's universe, and the MCU 616 universe, into a version of Battleworld, and that is meant to set up the events of Avengers Secret Wars based on the Jonathan Hickman 2015 Secret Wars. We saw a little bit of that happening in the Spider-Man Brand New Day post-credit scene, where you see him on a version of Earth in the Spidey tracker.
No Spider-Man sighting. Location unknown.
Then the Spidey tracker detecting him on a life raft, I believe, the Fantastic Four ship in deep space. Like, he jumps there real quickly, and you see reality warp with the Bifrost screaming past, and it just seems like all the stars warping is Dr. Doom finally accomplishing his goal of creating Battleworld. Reality changes. The people who do survive to Secret Wars wind up on Battleworld, but most people who aren't on the life raft, the Fantastic Four ship, don't remember that reality has changed because Dr. Doom has changed all their memories. They then have their version of movie MCU Avengers Secret Wars. It's going to be a little bit different from the Jonathan Hickman version, but there'll be some Easter eggs for those comics, some big beats that they adapt from the comics and from the 1980s version of Secret Wars, because early theory, that's when Spider-Man got his original symbiote in the comics. All the heroes eventually band together across the multiverse on Battleworld, like multiverse Avengers assemble as they defeat Dr. Doom, save reality, then remake reality with Frank Lloyd Richards, because Kevin Feige already said that they're taking inspiration from the end of Jonathan Hickman's original Secret Wars comic book to create the next Marvel Phase 7 as things go forward. So they fix reality. All the characters who did come from other Earths in the multiverse go back to those places, like Tobey Maguire goes back to his Earth, Andrew Garfield goes back to his Amazing Spider-Man Earth. All the classic X-Men go back to their universe and so on and so forth, but there are a couple changes to the MCU so that its 616 universe more closely resembles the comic book true 616 universe, where a bunch of X-Men and mutants start popping up. Fantastic Four from the new Fantastic Four movies also live there, and all the Avengers are there again too. So everybody lives together from the comics the way they did, and it's not weird. They don't need to do multiverse explainers when you want to have X-Men pop up in somebody else's movie, or like their brand new versions of X-Men, the recast actors from the X-Men 2028 movie that they just talked about during D23. But also when that happens, the younger Steve Rogers, who's a little bit older with the beard, Shirt Guy goes back to his family with Peggy Carter, lives out the rest of his life, and ages into Old Man Cap. So eventually what they'll say is that Old Man Steve Rogers Cap that we see at the end of Avengers Endgame that's telling Falcon he doesn't want to tell him what he did, where that band came from, and about the life that he led with Peggy Carter and his sons. That'll also now reference him telling him about the events of Avengers Doomsday and Secret Wars because he lived through all that. So it winds up being a lot more of Steve Rogers jumping around in his timeline way more, and we're just seeing way more of that life that he led. And it just happens that a big portion of that is a giant Avengers Doomsday movie and a giant Avengers Secret Wars movie. For the most part, I think all the new footage we see, like that 4 minutes, is just going to be that Captain America Steve Rogers scene with Loki showing up at the end of the movie after he goes back to live with Peggy Carter and their son is born to say, you need to get out of here right now. I'm going to take you to another Earth, and it winds up being the 828 universe. But maybe they'll also include some other deleted scenes from Avengers Endgame, extended versions of scenes, because they shot a lot of extra footage that did not wind up in the theatrical cut. There are pages and pages. Like, you could release an entire other Avengers movie just with the deleted scenes from Avengers Endgame. Probably some of the most famous ones are Iron Man inside the Soul World meeting the older version of Morgan Stark after he snapped the Infinity Stone, because everybody who snaps the Infinity Stones are meant to go into the Soul World and see something that is very personal to them. There was also another scene where Hulk sees Natasha inside the Soul World because she's already died at that point.
Whatever it takes.
There were a bunch of scenes of Bruce Banner turning into Professor Hulk, like we're seeing him turn into Professor Hulk for the first time. There was also an extended scene at the beginning of the movie where you see him being more of a hero, saving a whole bunch of people with Reginald VelJohnson, who is now like a confirmed MCU character, just trying to stop a disaster. So it was going to set up the idea that Professor Hulk was a really good hero that everybody loved, and he wasn't somebody that was feared like the Savage Hulk that we saw in Spider-Man Brand New Day come back. There were a lot of extended scenes of the final battle, them in the trenches all talking together, like very extended scenes going on and on and on, but the Russos wanted to speed things up, just like get to the actual battle. There was the extended scene after Iron Man snaps the Infinity Gauntlet then dies, where everybody takes a knee and Gamora just turns around and walks away because she doesn't know, like, this version of Gamora is younger and she hasn't had the relationship with the Avengers. So she's like, why am I standing here? Why are they all paying deference to this guy that just snapped the Infinity Gauntlet? I don't care about this. One of the funny things that I saw recently was that Stern Pinball actually made a pinball machine based on Avengers and Marvel stuff, and they used this deleted scene in their pinball machine, even though it didn't wind up being released in actual theaters. There are also many other deleted scenes and concepts, but some of them are a little bit smaller, but there are cool ones too, like Captain America going to Vormir to return the Soul Stone and meets with Red Skull. So we finally see Captain America and Red Skull having their reckoning too after the events of Captain America: The First Avenger. There was another moment at Iron Man's funeral where Doctor Strange and T'Challa talk about future threats that could occur because they were setting up a lot of stuff for T'Challa's Black Panther before Chadwick Boseman passed away. So you remember, this is when he was still alive, before Black Panther Wakanda Forever came out. And probably one of the biggest deleted concepts that they decided not to go with, probably for better, is that Kevin Feige originally wanted all 6 of the original Avengers to die in the film. However, it was Joe and Anthony Russo that dismissed the idea and got him to back off on that. Like, no, people would be way too pissed off if we wound up killing all the original Avengers. One of the big problems that Marvel ran into that they now have to use this re-release of Avengers Endgame for is that a lot of people felt like Endgame was the end of the MCU, so they basically just jumped off ship and didn't keep up with the Marvel Phase 4, Marvel Phase 5, or Marvel Phase 6 stuff, so they're heading into Avengers Doomsday not having seen a lot of the Marvel movies or Marvel TV shows, so they don't know who a lot of these new characters are and what's happened to everybody since the end of Avengers Endgame. So basically Marvel has to pull a do-over, re-release Avengers Endgame, add in new footage that connects it more directly with Avengers Doomsday and sets that up with the Steve Rogers subplot, the Stolen Lives subplot that Doctor Doom is so pissed off about. so that all the casual fans going to see Avengers Doomsday won't be completely lost with all these people who are now back in the movie. Like, wait a minute, didn't Captain America turn into Old Man Captain America? Why is Iron Man back? Not realizing that he's meant to be Doctor Doom, a completely different character, not connected to Iron Man. When the Russos said that they built Avengers Endgame to be an ending for this era of Marvel, they almost did too good of a job. Hindsight 2020, they probably should have done a better job of setting up all the Marvel Phase 4 stuff that they were planning on doing at the time, so the people were a little bit more hyped up to actually see that stuff. But a lot of that just didn't work out. Like, people were not happy or satisfied with a lot of the movies and a lot of the TV shows they released. So maybe it is better that they just try to skip over that stuff and in a small way kind of pretend in Avengers Doomsday like a lot of that stuff did not happen. Because if you saw Marvel just released a list of movies and TV shows that you need to watch to understand what's happening in Avengers Doomsday, and a lot of stuff from Marvel Phase 4 and Marvel Phase 5 and Marvel Phase 6 got left off of that list. Which is kind of funny, like them telling you, like, no, you don't need to watch like 90% of that stuff. You just need to watch a couple things, you'll be good. So if you're also a little bummed out that Marvel's only adding in 4 additional minutes to Avengers Endgame for the re-release, do not worry, I will go see it, I will sit through it, and I will do a video for all the new footage they released. But like I said, I believe it's mostly just meant to be that Steve Rogers teaser, like an extended version of that with more Loki footage that we saw for Avengers Doomsday earlier this year.
How do you choose who lives and who dies?
All the Infinity Vision hype that's part of this trailer here is just meant to be Disney's version of IMAX, because they lost IMAX theaters to Dune 3 because they're still doing Doomsday. Both Dune 3 and Avengers Doomsday are releasing at the same time later this year, and because of the way the contracts work with IMAX screens, they're all locked up with Dune 3, and they can't give any of them to Avengers Doomsday, which is wild. They're not going to release Doomsday in IMAX, at least during first release. There'll probably be a re-release before Avengers Secret Wars, where it will get IMAX theaters for a little while, but that's not till like 2027, so you have to wait a long time to actually see it in IMAX if you really want to do that. They did confirm that Avengers Secret Wars at the end of 2027 will be released in IMAX, so I wouldn't be surprised if you never hear about Infinity Vision ever again after Avengers Doomsday. Like, it's just this one-time thing where they try to hype up their release of Avengers Doomsday because they don't have access to IMAX theaters. I'm sure there's going to be 1,000 more questions about what's happening with this re-release and Avengers Doomsday. Just expect a bunch more trailers for Doomsday to also be attached to this re-release next month. Remember, it's coming out in September, so we only have a little while left before actual Doomsday hits theaters. Everybody post all your reactions in the comments below and all your theories about all the extended versions of scenes, deleted scenes, and the 4 additional minutes they're adding back into the movie. Because we just had D23, they released all these new teasers and previews of the new X-Men 2028 movie, Vision Quest, new episodes that are happening in October. I'll be doing videos for all that stuff. I've already done a big X-Men teaser video. Click here for that, and click here for my Vision Quest trailer video and all my Avengers Doomsday trailer videos. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.